Hi everyone, I am at 3D in Albuquerque, New Mexico with Wendy, the owner, and we're going to break down Janu Sirsasana C because it's a really hard posture and it comes on pretty early in primary series. So, Janu Sirsasana is very disorienting to anyone who is new to Ashtanga. You probably have never done a posture like Janu Sirsasana in any type of vinyasa or flow class that you may have done before you started an Ashtanga practice. So I do notice that like a lot of students who are new to the practice are fairly confused by this one. So I thought we could take this opportunity to break it down a little bit and help you figure out what exactly is going on in Janu Sirsasana. So ultimately, it's a really big hip opener, except that you haven't done a lot up to this point to get your hips open. So the first thing you want to do is really sink into all your standing postures and take advantage of your standing poses as an opportunity to really work into your hip joint. Let's look at Janu Sirsasana A before you go into E. So A is basically like a seated tree pose, and it's pretty accessible for most people. So the first thing I would encourage you to do is go a little bit deeper in your Janu A. And one of the ways that you can do that is to very deliberately press your leg down, your leg that's bent down into the mat. So you don't even necessarily have to use your hands to do it, but think of this as more of a hip opener than a forward bend. So bring your focus to what's happening with the hip. And think about really taking the right leg and energizing it down into the mat before you go ahead and take your fold over your left leg. And then while you are folded down, just keep the sensation of pressing the bent leg into the mat. So maybe you would have an adjustment and have somebody actually pressing you down. But if you're not having the opportunity to be adjusted, you want to create that sensation of the leg bone really dropping down into the floor throughout, just to help you really work into the hip joint. Another way you could possibly try to get deeper into the hip joint would be to move the foot a little bit further out away from the leg, but away from the opposite leg, so that you have like a solid 90-degree angle here. If you go wider than 90, you might feel it more in your hip joint, but you would be breaking the mudra, so I wouldn't necessarily suggest that you break that seal. But you can, for certain, make sure that you're at the 90-degree bend, and that will help you get a little bit more open as well. So less than 90 is also fine depending on the flexibility of your hips, but a 90-degree angle will help you get a little bit more movement. You want to go ahead and change your sides? So notice how Wendy's knee joint is totally closed, and that's actually important as you move into Janu C, is we need to make sure that you're able to close the knee joint in Janu A. And again, when you take A, think about really pressing the Janu leg down into the mat. So you just don't want to be sitting there. You want to be pushing the leg bone down, working into the adductor and the hip joint, and then taking your forward fold. Okay. Perfect. So I'm going to have Wendy sit on the block for Janu C. So what the block does is it basically gives you a little bit more space to move into Janu C. The hips are a little bit elevated, and with the hip up off the mat, so the block's maybe like 3 inches tall, it gives you a little bit more room to literally wiggle your foot into the Janu C position. So for Janu C, because it is disorienting, normally how I would teach it to a new student would be to have them take their hand and bring it behind their ankle and then grab onto the mound with the big toe of the left foot or the ball of the foot. And then you're going to take your opposite hand and bring it to the heel and start to rotate from the hip joint so that the toes are moving down to the mat and the heel is moving up. So with the toes down and the heel up, you would bring the arch to the inner thigh of the opposite leg. So notice how her knee joint is totally closed. And then by sitting on the block, she's allowed for a couple extra inches so that she's able to put her foot into that shape. So if you have a tighter hip and you're sitting on the floor, it might not be as accessible for you to move into Janu C. So if you're struggling, I would suggest the first thing that you do is sit on a block because those couple inches can make all the difference. Folding forward here,
you would fold the same way you do in Janu A. It just feels more intense because your right leg is certainly in a more compromising position. So the most important thing here is just to make sure that the knee joint stays closed, and that'll keep the knee safe. All right, so let's take a look at the other side. And again, so there's this rotation, so just kind of pulling the ball of the foot down towards the floor and rotating the heel forward. But again, the movement's not coming from the knee, it really has to come from the hip, and that's why you want to start with the knee joint closed. So if you feel anything in your knee, just dial it back, and I'm going to show you another modification in a second. Again, the block's super helpful because it helps you make space that you might not be able to make on your own yet. So this would be a great way to do it for a while, and then as you start to feel more comfortable, you could go to a shorter block, like a half block, and then eventually to the floor. So Wendy does it really well, and I know that she has open hips. If you are newer to Ashtanga, you're probably still wondering what just happened. Because it really is disorienting. And if you have tighter hips, sitting on a block might not be enough yet. So what I do with my brand new students is I frequently bring them over to a windowsill or to a bench. So we have a bench here. This bench is a tad low. It'll work. So usually something maybe like 3 or 4 inches higher would probably be a little bit better, but Wendy's pretty short, so it's gonna work just fine here. So what happens when you stand up is that you're not dropping all your weight into your hips like you do when you sit down. So you're at this huge advantage because you're going to have more movement from your hip joint when you're on your feet versus when you're on your butt. So if you're new to it, or if you're teaching someone who's new to it, teaching it from standing is going to give you a lot more range of motion in the hip joint. And it's just kind of confusing with what's going on with the foot for people when they're seated. But if you're standing, I'll stand behind the bench. What you can do is just basically come into like a seated or a standing tree pose, and then start to work the foot. You put the foot on the bench. So now this leg is basically in the shape that it would make in Janu C, except my hips are lifted. Again, this bench is a little bit short. Maybe you're a little bit short, and maybe it'll look better on you. So she comes into this external rotation. And then, like I said, I normally have my students on a windowsill, so it's probably like a few inches higher. And what they start to do is you press your pelvis forward, so towards the bench or towards the windowsill or toward whatever you have in front of you. And that actually is going to work you more open through the adductor and through the hip joint. Can you feel it now? Yeah, it's pretty subtle with something this low, but if you were up a few inches higher, it wouldn't be so subtle. Even for me, after having done this pose for like 15 years, if I'm doing it on the windowsill and pressing my pelvis forward, I feel a lot of movement and opening in my hips. And I actually think that's directly translatable to poses that we do in 3rd series and again in 4th series. So taking the time to learn it in primary series really is valuable because it will come up again and again and again. And then go ahead and change your leg. So with new students, I will have them stay at the windowsill sometimes for a few months until they start to open up their hips. Again, because Janu Sirsasana is at the beginning of primary series, it's really demanding on the hip joint, and sometimes it makes a lot of sense for students to work it standing when there's less weight on the hips, and then circle back to this and try it sitting down after you've worked a little bit further along into primary. So again, if you're standing, you would just kind of shift the pelvis forward, and that's going to keep you opening through like this whole section, the hip flexors, the adductors, and help you work towards having the flexibility to do it seated. And also, if you happen to find this pose particularly confusing, like you aren't really sure what your foot's supposed to be doing, the orientation just seems to make a lot more sense for people when they attempt it from standing. So, I think that's all I have to say about Janu C. Thanks, Wendy.